I have nothing to do with him. Julius Malema insists EFF doing much better now without Floyd Shivambu. Economic Freedom Fighters leader Julius Malema says he has no friendship at all with his former comrade and Eastville Deputy President of the Red Berets, Floyd Shivambu, who crossed the floor to join the Jacob Zuma's fledgling uMkhonto weSizwe MK party. Last month, IOL reported that Shivambu rocked the EFF boat dramatically when he announced he was leaving his influential position in the party to join Zuma. At the time, Malema expressed shock and sorrow over his brother's departure and revealed that the door would always be open for Shivambu if ever he decided to return to the political party they formed together after being hounded from the ANC Youth League. However, in an interview with SABC's Clement Manyathela, Malema said he has no other relations and contacts with Shivambu after the latter left the EFF. I'm doing very well. The leadership of the EFF remains intact, although his departure was painful, but I got some sense of relief. I don't know why. It was as if I have put down some heavy load. So it's not always that bad things will always produce bad results. At times they produce very good results, Malema said. Asked about their personal friendship, Malema said it's all in history. No, I don't have anything to do with him. What brought us together was a common purpose. We met in the trenches. We did not meet in a club. We didn't meet at church. We didn't fall into love with each other at university in the same class. What brought us together was sharing the common agenda for the revolution, Malema said. Once we start seeing things differently, when what brought us together no longer exists, there is no need for me to be having any kind of relationship. The firebrand EFF leader also said, nothing of us now depends on his existence. We are much better now without him. Last week, IOA reported that Shivambu has shrugged off rumors of bad blood between himself and his longtime ally, Malema. Shivambu, who is the MK party's national organizer, has faced unrelenting mudslinging from prominent EFF members and leaders of social media who accused him of selling out the Red Berets, a party he helped form in 2013 after he and Malema were expelled from the ANC. Speaking to the Daily News during his campaign in Durban ahead of Wednesday's by-election, Shivambu dismissed claims of a rift between himself and Malema. He remains my brother and a comrade. People must understand that there might be differences in politics, but that does not mean that in our personal lives there are differences, he said. On the attacks from EFF members, he said he had not seen any, adding that he was busy with the work of the MK party. On the other hand, dear white people, why do you want to say the K word so badly? So, Ronaldo Gauss has been fired by the DA. In an extensive statement on social media that promised a full statement later in the week, Gauss blamed IOL for getting him fired. As if using the K word and N word so regularly in his social media posts and videos, his conduct on social media, his antagonistic nature had nothing to do with it. The terms used were never meant to insult or belittle anyone, and if hearing those words now is hurtful to you, then I profusely apologize. It's the if for me. When there is a flaccid apology like this, it puts the onus on the person who is offended and evades the responsibility for causing offense. Of course, hearing the word kafir is offensive and hurtful, but more importantly, saying the word kafir is wrong. Gauss' apology is about hurting feelings, not an apology for saying the words. Oh, his boss says he's apologized before. Okay, fine. But what really got to me was how many people came after IOL for ignoring the context under which he said the offensive words. If you look at his older posts, especially his video, he's clearly very comfortable using the K word. And so many white people jumped on the bandwagon using the context argument, because surely using the K word in context is fine, right? Let me share with you some excerpts of IOL submissions to the Press Council of South Africa's Appeal Committee after we were ordered by the Ombudsman to apologize to these racists. It is important to note that there can never be a justification to use such disgusting and racially aggressive terminology. The use of racial slurs, particularly words like kafir and nigger, have long been a contentious and deeply harmful issue in South Africa. These terms, rooted in the country's dark history of apartheid and racial segregation, carry with them a legacy of oppression, hatred, and dehumanization. Racial slurs like kafir and nigger fall within the realm of hate speech as defined by the Section 16, subsection 2, subsection C. These words, historically used to degrade and dehumanize black people, are considered to advocate a hatred based on race and have the potential to incite harm, whether emotional, psychological, or physical. As such, the use of this slur is not protected under the right to freedom of expression and can be subject to legal consequences. In Ngwenya v. Investec, Peter Paul Ngwenya was fined 24,000 rand, suspended for using the K word against the CEO of Investec. The court reinforced that such language is inherently racist and emphasized the need for accountability in cases involving hate speech, regardless of the context in which it is used. Considering the legacy of apartheid in this country and the long shadow it casts over our current legal and societal frameworks, it's important to question the number of people who challenged IOL pressure on Gau's racism, making the same argument about context he used in his press council complaint against IOL. We also were forced to question the press council even entertaining a complaint from the racist, especially considering that he has a matter pending at the South African Human Rights Commission, was at the time suspended by the DA pending the outcome of its investigation, and given South Africa's sordid legacy of racial discrimination which continues to spread its tendril ubiquitously. The Press Council seems to think that you can utter racial slurs if there is context, and we disagree vehemently with that assertion. The terms kafir and niggers are used to oppress and dehumanize black South Africans. They are used to assert racial superiority, reinforce power dynamics, and perpetuate systematic discrimination. The use of these words is not merely offensive, it serves as a reminder of the historical oppression and violence experienced by black people. These slurs have evolved into verbal weapons that can inflict profound psychological harm and perpetuate feelings of inferiority, shame, and social exclusion among those targeted. But the argument used to defend Gau's use of the abhorrent language was one of context, as if using those words in any context is ever excusable. So why were so many white people so keen on backing Gau's? Does it speak to their own inherent racism? Their belief that words hold no power? Or was it yet another attempt to diminish the pain and suffering of millions of South Africans following systematic oppression and institutionalized racism, reducing that trauma to something that can simply be gotten over? 30 years in democracy, that trauma is still fresh. This is something white people will never understand because they don't recognize the power dynamics at play that underpin racism to begin with. These racial slurs still retain their power to oppress and discriminate in whatever context. Worst of all, where a white man is trying to make an unnecessary point to get an emotive response to rule clickbait. They seek to draw moral equivalence between the challenges white people face today with the suffering and persecution black people of this country endured for centuries. Understand, white people that fighting so hard for the right to say the K word without resource lays bare the lack of understanding you have for the pain your abuse have caused, your trauma your microaggressions reawaken, and the deep offense your performative displays of white supremacy incur. If Ronaldo Gauss is a different person now to the person he was 10 years ago, as his social media post claims, I want him to point out to me the Damascus moment that made him overcome his racism. Or was it simply that part of the process white people go through as they age, infancy, childhood, puberty, racism, adult racism, called out of exposed for racism, reformed racism? If Ronaldo Gauss is indeed a reformed racist, I need him to tell me when and how that reform happened so that we may teach others. Lance Written is the editor of IOL. In the meantime, Government of National Unity, The Inconvenienced Truth by Neil DeBeer. As a truth patriot and a person who prides himself as having struggled credentials, it must be said that after such an election as we experienced in 2024, we demanded more. The revelation, after not a single party received the majority and clearly a vote rather of no confidence than the opposite, it was clear that political games were going to be the order of the day. Even prior to the aftermath, also being integrally part of the MPC, which is multi-party charter leadership, one could not help but feel that deals were being made even prior to elections results being posted. The outcome of the election suddenly spurred the idea of Government of National Unity. But to me it was clear the table was already set, prepared, and invites were mailed long before the event, just my gut feeling. As soon as the parties, and in specific the following two, the ANC and DA, as main characters, announced that formal talks were taking place, it was very obvious that smoke that was highlighted indeed proved there was a fire all along. Coming from quite a harsh and heartfelt campaign strategy all around, the thought was in my mind, how would they get along and set aside the words on their posters, but at the same time agree on a myriad of policy differences? Those in specific would be the Bela Bill, NHI, Russia versus Ukraine, and the land expropriation without compensation, to mention a few. Finally, we were presented the new GNU, not without a few surprises, and it was clear to me that there was a very difficult sell and media message that had to be crafted by all sides. It was clear from the onset that the parties were so trying to put out smiles and positive rhetoric with the hope that not only South Africans would buy into the GNU, but also the world. It was my opinion that the GNU and its current compilation, yes, was the best deal we could form, the obvious counter-offer of an EFF MKGNU, too much of a horror to even imagine. It was my opinion that we would only need wait until the first true policy differences aired to test if the GNU would hold water. Not only in operation, last week the first test came, the Bela Bill signing. There can be no doubt that should you have an interest in education and the manner in which the state wants to govern and control our children's education, that the Bela Bill is a critical act to observe. It was clear that a huge majority of educators, scholars, and more critically the parents, totally rejected the Bela Bill. It is now time that we look at the opinion of the two main players in the GNU, the ANC and DA, who were clearly on the opposite side of the implementation of the Bela Bill. So dramatic was the statement of the DA's Helen Zille when he stated that the Bela Bill was the line in the sand, the non-negotiable. Well, we saw the president reject the threats of the DA to work, and he clearly claimed victory by signing it. We are then told that certain clauses were still open for debate and that discussions would follow by parties to find middle ground. Sure you are, but no matter the propaganda and spin, it is signed. The final statement by Cyril, if the Minister of Basic Education does not implement the bill, she will be fired. Seemingly the GNU of convenience has now seen that the previous failed ANC voter outcome and drop from the majority is not at all showcased in the first taste of an all are equal pact. The first taste of oppositions within the GNU has failed, and now one must shudder to think what will be done when the NHI, Land and Sonto Commission tests follow. To conclude, the country needs a stable further governance, not a "if you do this, we leave" attitude. We can say it's early days, and I will agree, but actions speak louder than words, and from where I sit, we need positive unity in the GNU, not a marriage of convenience. Neil De Beer is the president of the United Independent Movement, UIM. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the views of IOL or independent media. And that's it from Egypt's Network. Stay tuned to our celebrity and gossip news.